Hi, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Adam's Music Box. And today I want to talk about the place where a lot of music is born, insofar as where it exchanges hands from the great unknown into the hands of the record listener. Now, obviously, today this model is technically obsolete because streaming and downloads can be used to listen to music of any variety at your fingertips and in any format, from the stuff on Spotify, which is still unfortunately MP3, though we keep hoping it will change because they have a really good user interface, to Tidal and to other websites that allow for high resolution FLAC and DSD files, which gives you amazing quality. But what about the real physical media buying experience? Well, a lot of the chains, in fact, just about every one of the chains I can think of, is long gone in just about every major country except for Japan. More on that later. But in America, Canada, Britain, Australia, France, Germany, just about name the country. These big chain stores are gone, whether the more exciting ones like Tower Records or the ones that were a bit more drab. I don't even know if Walmart sells music anymore. I think that every now and then, when there's a special box set or something like that, they'll have a Walmart exclusive. But even big sort of department and big box stores that used to have that, every department store, just about, and every big box store would have a music section. The selection might not be as good as that at a Tower Records, but they'd have it. All that's gone because, in a literal sense, it's obsolete. But in a bigger sense, it isn't. So let's go over why it's obsolete in a literal sense. Well, there's the first example, which is streaming, and then there's downloads, and then for people who want physical media, which is generally people in the niche market, either audiophile or collector, you can order it from places like Music Direct, Amazon, eBay, Discogs. The list goes on, and it's sent right to your house at the speed that you want. And some of them are quite quick. They weren't necessarily during the lockdowns and after that, but they're improving back almost to where they were in terms of 2019 speeds. So, why have record stores? Well, the chains decided we're not going to, because the experience that we offered can be accomplished more effectively for the consumer and more economically for business by doing it online. If you have a few warehouses that deliver to the people and the rest on streaming, that's much less overhead for anyone in the business of distributing the musical product, which is unfortunately what they call it, to the listener, to the consumer. But some record stores still exist, and these are the indies, the independent record stores. You'll find them in any big city and many small towns. And in many cases, you even, at least pre 2020, see a lot of new ones open. Well, what does that mean? It means that there's a demand, but I just told you that the demand for both streamed and physical media can be accomplished through streaming platforms, download platforms, and websites that deliver the product to you. So, where does this demand come from? And the answer is that it comes from the experience. And I don't mean this in a philosophical or supercilious way. What we've seen across many retail sectors in this age of Amazon and streaming and all the rest of it is that the brick and mortar shops that survive are the ones that give people something that literally could not be duplicated efficiently or otherwise in the online world. For clothing, it's the designer's assistant helping you try on the dress. Not me personally, but I assume that's what goes on. When it comes to shopping for food, even, some people want to touch and smell the vegetables before. That sounds like a Spinal Tap line, rather than ordering it from an Instacart or an Amazon Fresh or whatever. And for music, it's much the same. The idea of browsing a physical media can't be easily duplicated by an algorithm. The algorithm might be more efficient, but it loses out on the intangibles of you going through the shelves and finding something that you wouldn't have otherwise cared about or known about. And that is one of the problems with algorithms. They can only tell you things that are similar to what you already know. And apart from that, they can tell you about trends, they can tell you what's leading in a genre, but obscure stuff algorithms do not do. Then there's the human experience, the kinds of people that you meet at the record shops. And these are the customers and the proprietors. And usually at an independent record shop, the owners are around and the people that work for them are doing it because they're really passionate about that type of industry. When you go to work at an Amazon warehouse, it's generally not because you're passionate about that particular industry. And you meet all sorts of characters of all ages, from the studious that sort of run their business like a museum, to the guys that are sort of hunched over a burrito and a doobie at the front desk, and everything in between. And that's part of the magic of independent record stores. Some of the people love to be helpful, some are rude, some are somewhere in between. There's so many stories to tell, but one of the most infamous of all of the independent record stores, and it's been there for a long time. It survived several recessions, riots, several riots, COVID, all this stuff, and it's still there. And this is a place in LA on Melrose called the Record Collector. Some of you watching might know this place. Its owner is a guy called Sandy Chase, and his only employee stroke assistant is a man called Henry, and they've both been there for years. Now, Sandy is a very particular record store owner in that he loathes digital. He's said things. He wages war on all digital formats, whether it's the ones that we can all agree on as being sonically inferior, like MP3, but he doesn't limit it to that. Even high resolution digital formats, he hates. But if it's analog, he's got it. Reel to reel tapes, LPs, 45 singles, 10-inch records, 78s, wax cylinders. I kid you not. He's got wax cylinders. I think I said reel to reel tape. Those are probably the best sonically of all the analog formats, but he's got it all. And he's someone that doesn't allow browsing unless you really know him well. And even then, he's not so keen on it. He's the kind of person that you walk in there, he's very tall, very imposing, and he'll say, well, what do you want? And he gives people tests. He asks them about their thoughts on music, what equipment they have, why they're coming there. And this is sort of the antithesis of the stoned out, burrito and doobie record store, where it's come as you are, go as you please. As I said, there's room for both of them, and both of these kinds of places do still exist because of this experience that people are buying into. And in the times that I had gone to the record collector, I found Mr. Chase very, very helpful. I mean, I got the same questions everyone else did. It takes a few visits to fully pass the test, but once you've passed it, he's a very interesting person with many interesting theories. He knows which conductors he likes and doesn't like, but he's non-prejudicial. He'll sell you a record of a conductor you don't like. And I say that because he mainly specializes in classical and jazz, but he does have every genre, including some very rare rock and funk LPs. But classical and jazz are the two specialities that he has, mainly because of the era in which the records come from. But again, he says if it's analog, he's probably got it. It's one of the biggest. He claims, I believe, it's the biggest collection of music outside of the Smithsonian in a single place. And barring a master vault of master tape recordings owned by a record label, it could well be true. The place is deceptively small. It goes back a long way. He has a lot of very interesting stereo equipment there, JBL stuff. He's had Altec Lansing stuff, Macintosh vintage amps, Marantz vintage, all of the good stuff. And that's just one example. Then you have the places like Amoeba on the west coast of the US. where you have several locations, but big and pretty laid back. Browsing is their experience. And that just shows that there are many different kinds of experience, from the ones that love to recommend the stuff, from the ones that demand you know what you want, to the ones that welcome browsing. All of these are experiences that are being sold. Now, obviously, the last couple of years, 3 years, well, 2 to 3, have been pretty bad for every brick and mortar business, including the ones that were successfully selling these experiences as recently as 2019. And the reason for this is mainly to do with the economy. Inflation has been out of control, and this has meant that places that relied on a certain margin can't achieve that anymore because it's just impossible to stay in business. But many of them are still holding on. Because again, even at inflated prices, people still want to pay for this experience. Now, one thing I think that turns some people off from these record shops is the snobbery of some of their advocates. Oh, you only listen to Spotify, you're unworthy. And that's just silly. If someone were to tell me 30 years whatever ago that there'd be something one day where you, from anywhere in the world, whether you've got a phone or a computer or whatever, you could type in the name of virtually any song, any album, any piece of music ever recorded and get it at your fingertips. And in the case of Tidal, in high quality, it would be like a flying car. It would be outer space. And so people shouldn't take that away. And there's also the fact that in an age of inflation where it's hard to get places, because going to a good independent record shop sometimes involves traveling outside of where you live or to the other side of a city. It's quite democratizing because now you don't need to live in a New York or a London or an LA or a Chicago or a San Francisco Bay Area to have all of this at your fingertips. You could be on a farm with your Starlink satellite radio and have the more music than a million people could listen to if they devoted their lives to it. Don't take that away. Frank Zappa, going back to him, in the 80s even said that he thought that physical media would become obsolete and that people would receive music through a cable, that much like pay-per-view cable television, where you'd use your phone keypad to type in the name of what you wanted to hear and it would come into your stereo system via the cable. That isn't a million miles away from what streaming and online downloads are. And Zappa was saying this in the 80s. So we shouldn't underrate that, but nor should we say, oh, it's progress, let's get rid of all of this, because the experiences that these people sell are unique and they cannot be duplicated in any other situation. So that's my take on the independent record store. So, like, subscribe, and we will see you next time. Take care.